The opinions expressed on the following audio program are solely those of the host and the guests. Burner Podcast is an independently produced, not-for-profit show and is not associated with the Burning Man organization or its subsidiaries. The views expressed are not representative of the entire Burning Man community and are presented here for entertainment purposes only. In short, calm the fuck down. It's just a podcast.
Right, it's episode number 147. Is 241 days till the man burns as of this particular recording. Actually, no, wait, it's 239 days as of this particular recording, the intro record. I'm looking at my notes and I recorded the other intro and it's supposed to be one day apart. So it's not like I went back in time. There's less days till the man burns as of this particular recording. Anyway, today we are rejoined by Torrey Pines Smith, aka Sarge. If you have not listened to episode number 72 of this podcast, I highly recommend you stop this listening right now. Stop listening right now and go back and listen to number 72 of this show entitled "At All Costs." That was where well, you know what? Yeah, all of us together met Torrey Pines for the first time. And man, it was it's like an emotionally raw and vulnerable episode. And I may talk about it, I'm sure, here during the chat. And basically that one, the long and short of it is that Torrey tells the story of his kind of stardom at Burning Man and the ways that cost him a lot of things in his personal life, cost him dearly. And I will encourage you to go back and listen to that one on your own. It was a very powerful episode. It is one that has been brought up many times by listeners of this show as one that deeply touched them and impacted them. The interview that you'll be hearing was recorded about a month ago. It was when I was in the Bay Area while I was up there the week prior. I recorded the interview with Kamal X. And then about a week later, I connected with Torrey at the offices of, I think I'm going to pronounce this right. We recorded at the offices of Endiatix, and I'm going to read directly from their website what they do because it's the fastest, most succinct way to do it. Endiatix makes robot pills for telemedicine. Our first product, PillBot, trademark, is a virtual endoscope or moving eyeball in the stomach. It is a pill camera you swallow that lets you access the world's best GI doctors without leaving home. So yeah, it's a medical startup. Since the last time Torrey was on the show, he's become a startup guy and like used to have this like big beard and he was in a makerspace. And then like now he's like wearing tight clothes and shaved and he's like a Silicon Valley startup guy type. So, I mean, talk about a journey. We've got quite a bit to catch up on. We do absolutely do a deep dive into that. This is one of those episodes where we don't talk quite so much about Burning Man specifically itself. On the last intro, I did share with you about how I see Black Rock City as like an airport of consciousness. People are coming, people are going. And this is definitely another one of those episodes where I really get to have a conversation with someone who's like gone through the whole journey of flying in and out of this airport and what all of that entails. It's a lot about gray areas. It's a lot about the evolution that happens in some of these communities, in fully deep into a thing, and then how that can evolve to something different in the default world. It is definitely a topic that is particularly interesting to me in my own artist career because I've sort of like arrived. It's funny. I'm 41 and I feel like I'm finally arrived at a place where I'm like ready to, make money and just not be like the broke artist forever. And the journey that I have and I am observing a lot of others have through the Burning Man community throughout the world is an interesting sort of like mechanism to process some of that. Burning Man is like this it is a very American thing. Like it keeps getting bigger. It's got like the capitalist Silicon Valley, let's go big kind of like aspect baked into its DNA. So even with all the sort of like tribal influences and the effigy burning and the pagan sort of ingredients that it has, it is also kind of like this very like big American export in the way that it has developed and manifested. And that's certainly not something that I can just explain in this intro. It's the thing that we've been exploring over the past 146 episodes of this show. And this particular interview is interesting because it is kind of exploring a lot of that topic. Torrey is an excellent stand-in for all the different directions that this Burning Man experiment can go. And, it's interesting. Like, I went to Africa Burn. I've attended regionals. Every regional sort of has baked into it that particular culture. Africa Burn, for example, the art cars are like way tinier. They are a lot more focused on sustainability. They have more of an awareness of not being too braggadocious about how much wealth is like floating around, right? Like they're a little like more cognizant of that. Whereas at Burning Man in Black Rock City in Nevada, we just keep wanting things to get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's very interesting to see all the different directions that the experiment is going. A lot of the crew that has joined Torrey is a lot of the crew from Sextant, which was the camp that he founded. Those of you who have been going to the playa for some time will remember they're the crew that would bring out those giant Tesla coils, which used to be such a mainstay of Esplanade. And we get into talking about how they've actually been like evolving into a venture capitalist firm. And I do mention towards the end that like I had this note for myself that if the last time I sat with Torrey, it was an interview about extremes and about come downs, this one is going to be more about balance. It is absolutely my pleasure to bring Torrey back onto the show, and I've been wanting to catch up with him for a long time. I didn't even want to like Google what he was doing. I could see that he was posting about tech startup stuff, and I was like, fuck it, I have a podcast. I'll just go talk to him directly rather than look this up on Google. I have a name for today's show, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to post it publicly, but I'm just going to call it in the audio. Today's episode is entitled AssRobots.com. You'll figure out why. I don't know if I can call it that in the text when I do actually post this. So my apologies if the name is different. So anyway, yeah, again, today's episode is entitled AskRobots.com. I go by Mr. Arash, even though nobody calls me Mr. Welcome to Burner Podcast.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met was the fly with the balls and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full of sound. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one for to give you no name.
Cool and sci-fi and fun, but like eventually they literally go in the toilet. Like what do you do with that narrative? And I just think it's hilarious. And let's not be snooty and weird. Like there are companies out there that send pills through the body that you have to go collect. That's not what we do, but the ones that have you collect them try to give you this really corporate, sterilized version of what you're actually doing, which is you're digging around in the toilet and getting something. And it's just completely ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And so I just figured let's have some fun with this.
Let's not take ourselves too seriously, which is the correct burner ethos, I would I would submit.
Yeah, there's been a really good transfer function between Burning Man and Beyond, which is basically just getting your ass kicked constantly.
Yeah.
Right? That's one of the neat things about the burner scene is like no matter where you are, like if you're at a regional or the big one, or you're just hanging out with someone you meet in the street, I guess the levity, that feeling that you share, which is just, oh yeah, we've definitely gotten our ass kicked together in that sense. Like, you know, it's kind of like during strike and you're just completely wrecked, you know, but you look around and you just see people grinning.
Yeah.
That carries over to, you know, kind of starting a company.
Yeah.
Right. Because like literally most days are like, well, we got our ass kicked in these metrics. It's very measurable about how poorly we're doing, right? We're getting our butts kicked, but we're still here, and it's actually kind of awesome.
You know, I've totally coincidentally ended up watching, like, what do you call it? Binging through The Dropout on Apple TV.
Oh, yeah.
Like just by coincidence this past week. And then now I'm kind of binging through the WeWork one with Anne Hathaway.
Man, I wish I was 9 feet tall and I had that really long neck. Like,
yeah.
Von Neumann, like, that guy has a neck game for miles.
Yeah.
Right? I like to tell people I love my feet.
Are you talking about Jared Leto from in the WeWork one?
Well, actually, the actual founder.
The actual person,
right?
Yeah, okay.
Right? Just like, talk about if you could just have a playing card game where you could sort of build your ideal founding persona.
Yeah.
I would love to be tall and gallant like that guy. I like to tell my friends that I love my feet. I love everything about them. It's just, they're so close. Yeah. Like sometimes I feel like they're sneaking up on me. I'm like, oh, and it's like, oh.
Yeah. I'm happy to say I don't have that particular challenge. I was talking to an Uber driver the other night, though, about whether or not I would be willing to trade my hair for like a super like fit body.
You have a great body.
My body, thank you. I'm like, it's definitely way chunkier than I would like for it to be.
I'd like to think that you and I aren't rocking dad bods.
Yeah.
You and I
don't think we're dad yet.
Exemplify the father figure.
I like that. That's elegant.
Right?
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, like, when I've been less fit, then I look at fit people and I'm like, oh man, they're so egotistical, just optimizing everything. Like, come on, be real. You know, you're so full of shit. And then I start running and jogging and I get into better shape. And then I'm immediately looking at less fit people and I'm being like, come on, pull your shit together. You know, like you'd have energy if you worked out. And I realized like, I am a total walking, like piece of comedy. Yeah. Right. Like all of the personality flaws you can see, they're just right there. They're not even hiding.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I mean, it's, you know, night implies day, black implies white. Like it's, how do we bring ourselves to where we want to go without acknowledging where we've been? And the only way to do that is by reflecting on how we're interacting with other people and what we see in other bodies. And so like, that's what the whole meditation practice is learning how to turn off that judgment machine, right?
When we were embarking on this, I started to have this idea, like, I think this journey is going to change me.
The journey of this podcast?
The podcast.
This next hour and a half.
Getting to this podcast, right? Launching a company, right? You know it's going to change you. I mean, it better change you. Yeah. Right? Otherwise, is it really a worthy journey? Yeah. But I thought it would be a good idea to reach out to a couple of friends that I really look up to. So there's Tree J, who's like classic temple builder. Small Fry, just like really good burners, like kind people, good, kind people. You know, sometimes you have friends and you wonder why they're your friends. Yeah. Just good, kind people. And I basically said, hey, you know, I will always answer if you call me someday, if I'm so fortunate that this journey is really working out and I'm in some like skyscraper somewhere and I've become this brutal imperialistic, you know, tycoon that is seemingly heartless, right? But if my phone rings and it's your name pops up, like I will reach through the ether back to this moment and I will pick up the phone call, right? Yeah. I will answer, you know.
I will not decline your call.
So it's kind of like, it was like a lifeline to, and I don't know, it's just funny because the journey changes you every single day.
100%.
right?
Yeah, it's not worth taking if it's not. I mean, and that's literally what a hero's journey is going through it in order to have that change.
It's really weird. It's really weird. Like, as a kid, we were not, we didn't have a ton of money, but we had really interesting, colorful stuff going on, right? But I always identified with always identified with progressive movements. I always identified with people seeking to change the status quo. I really identified with people who felt, like they were representing downtrodden people.
Yeah.
Totally, right? And so I identified with community organizing, identified with, political activism, all this stuff. And the really weird thing for me recently has been like launching this company with my friends. Very quickly, you find yourself climbing through various strata, right? Like you're forced to raise money or you immediately fail, right? Like you have to do it. You have to put on a suit. You have to take titles. You have to start having a presence out in the world. You go speak, you represent this cause. And very soon people are looking at you in a different way.
Yeah.
And the strange thing is like seeing in just a few years how you can suddenly find yourself completely on the other side of a conversation or the other side of a strata that you used to look at as this impenetrable evil wall trying to hold you down. What's it like to suddenly like literally be on the other side of that equation? And sometimes I'll see my buddies who are still doing community organizing, still identifying with like basically like identifying from a perspective of like permanent cultural poverty, right? It's like we need to help people who are poor. We need to help people who are, pushed down by the rest of the world. And the thing that's been crazy is like, I see people who have been identifying with that their whole lives. And in a few short years, if you want, you can go launch a company and become a CEO and like carry this torch. And all of a sudden you're like completely on the other side of it. And it has me in this really weird cognitive dissonance because, where's the progressive, like rebellious kid versus, is this some evil system we live in that is just business forces that represent a few and then lots of people who are sort of left out? Or do we live in this environment in this country where like just about anyone can do just about anything if they're motivated and they have the ability to build a team and go do it? It's just really weird because I don't really know I don't know how I would identify politically anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Like I look at...
You don't know where you're at now, meaning?
Oh, not even close.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like I don't look at the far left or the far right anymore as like I'm definitely not a far right person. I see what's happening in American politics and it's like kind of really scares me on the far right side. But then I look at some of the far left side and I see like, wait a minute. When I was a kid, we were trying to get solar installed everywhere and we were trying to put up wind turbines because like we were trying to save the world, right? Yeah. And now I see people on the far left like literally trying to like not let a solar farm get installed or not let a wind turbine go up because, I mean, there are problems with those, right? And it's big business that's building all that stuff, right? But at some point I just start to wonder like, does anyone actually want to like sit down and put in the work and actually stand for something real that lots of people can get on board with?
Yeah.
It's just weird. And so I definitely don't feel like if I'm not far left and I'm not far right, does that put me in the middle? And it's like, hell no. If you average those things together, that is not at all how I feel.
I mean,
right?
Choosing where you are on that particular spectrum is still electing to be a player in a system that was created before you were here, is my thought.
It's just really weird, like I do find myself drawn to ambitious, kind people that want to do nice, measurable things and have fun and kind of share it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like one of the reasons I really love people coming from the burn community is just, it's a place where just about anyone is welcome to enter and participate and sort of be heard and be celebrated. And then there's this sense of shared purpose. Like, you know, I think it was Burning Man that actually started to kill the rebellious kid in me, because it's like, it's easy if you perceive the world out there as a bad thing, then you can be against it, right? And then you're a punk, you're a rebel, you're fine. Okay, you stand to bring that bad thing down. But then you go to Black Rock City and you're like, wait a minute, I like Black Rock City. This is cool. People are being nice to me, and it's dissolving all my armor, and it's allowing me to be nice to other people, right? It's this beautiful thing that happens. But the weird thing is, all of a sudden, then you stand for something.
Right.
And you can't be a rebel anymore. Like, you have to actually...
Now you're willing to fight for something, and that means potentially declining people who used to be on a different side of that.
Well, it also means you have to, in a holistic way, say, I support building something, and I will carry the weight of the inevitable hassle that represents. Right. You know, it's like,
well, what you're saying right now is what I was about to express, is that this is where I'm at on what you're describing. And I think the important part to always note is this might change for me in a few years. I might learn different things, and I might fall somewhere else. But so far, where I have landed on is that I used to see the world in terms of this is right and this is wrong, and it is universal. And that I used to hear the argument of, well, sometimes you just don't agree with those people over there, but we have to be tolerant of them, et cetera, right? Where I've come to now on the journey is that more of reality is about choices. We make choices about what we want reality to be and what we want to fight for. And this is a kind of topic that's going to take much longer to explain, I think, than just a quick conversation. But it occurred to me that my desire for there to be a universally written in stone, this is right, this is wrong, so that I can be on the side of right and I can point at those people over there and say they're on the side of wrong, was cowardly. It was a way for me to escape it and say, it's not up to me. This is right and this is wrong. But now I've gotten to that place where I'm starting to look at it and go, you know what? It's all choices. It's all, like, the deeper I went into the spiritual journey, not even the fucking business side of it, man. Yeah. The more psychedelics I did, the more I was like, man, like it's all right. It's all wrong. But I like this. Like, I'm here in the United States. You know, I lived in Iran when I was a kid, but so for me, the idea of moving to another country is not some insane alien thing. I could do it.
Oh yeah.
But I like this. I like Burning Man. I like that we live in the kind of country that would create something like Burning Man and create this kind of community.
Totally.
I choose to be here.
The thing that I'm just starting to feel, which is like, this is almost like a proto-political opinion, which is just, I feel like in the 21st century and before that, kind of the status quo was you could have lines in the sand, and you could say, like, there's us and there's them, and you can sort of play that out. Right. I'm starting to feel like moving forward, if we have a sincere intent to graduate to some form of next level of peace and harmony as people, and this is very idealistic to even mention it, but I'm a very idealistic person. I'm feeling like if there's going to be a path forward to a more healed, beautiful, kind world, I'm not really sure we're going to be able to enter that world with as sharply defined cultural boundaries like we used to have. Right? Like, when you say, I'm this way and other people are that way and this is the line, that's a very expensive line to draw on a map.
Yeah.
Right? Or in the sand.
Yeah.
And it's I guess there is a beautiful thing here in the United States, which is just, the whole idea of the melting pot, which is, come here, demand respect, be respectful, be seen, be heard, contribute. But then kind of be kind, like your neighbor's barbecuing, you should probably go hang out with them. If they're in their front yard, it's an invitation to go say hi. And, you hope they're different from you. Otherwise it's going to be a boring day, right?
Yeah.
Bring what you have, share it, kind of appreciate what other people have. But the instant you start to say that I am actually better than someone else in any way, it just starts this cascade of pain. And I don't actually have, a conclusion that I would try to push on anyone for this one. I'm just starting.
I would say that right there is important. That right there is the key, is to avoid coming to conclusions.
Conclusions, right?
Conclusions at some point will fuck you up.
Chris Rock in Dogma says, beliefs are a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, beliefs are tricky.
You can change an idea.
Yeah.
It's harder to change a belief.
Yeah. Because once you've written that, then a conclusion, it's like how a period is, enemy of a poet, I've heard.
Right.
I heard a poet say this. I don't know if this is true. but it feels like, I always will look for ways to say, like, this is where I'm at currently on the journey, and I'm open to whatever changes come. And the more we mix things up, it's not to say it is the answer, the more likely it is that we will continue to feel some more progress forward.
I'd like to feel, since I've been having this incredibly lucky chapter where when I get an idea, I sort of seem to be able to just follow that idea and build it and go on this adventure. Nothing's really holding me down. I've kind of stopped holding myself down, which is awesome. And you're like, wow, like I can just go out into the world and do just about anything with just about anyone. It's weird that it took me half my life to figure this out, but I'm here now. So let's explore this space. All I would hope for would just be that other people would also have similar opportunities, right? Like if you have an interest in something, you should most definitely go pursue that interest, probably without delay, right? Yeah. So if it's like you want to go get an education, that should probably be readily available. I mean, I don't really understand why we would ever want that to be difficult in a civilized society.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be easy. And like here, you and I can have this peaceful conversation because we're well fed, we're comfortable, we're physically safe, like we're in a, there's carpet on the floor and the temperature is mellow. Right.
Well, I mean, part of the burner experience is that we have a lot more of us who just simply the ability to attend Burning Man and to find it enjoyable is a reflection of having your base needs covered. We're a little bit further up the Maslow's pyramid thing where we can go and have conversations like this and wax philosophic because we're not striving to put food on the table and find a place to shower today.
It's amazing how quickly that sense of peace evaporates too, right? I have people very close to me. Some of them, one person has recently been working for the company, and just a few months ago, they were in a really tight spot. And so we were hanging out and it looked like there was an opportunity building robot pills to maybe move beyond that tight spot, right? So it was like, oh, cool. I can give this opportunity to someone. Let's work together. Let's make stuff. But the crazy thing is all you do is you take away a little bit of the security of having your bills paid and your car functioning and your basic mechanics of conducting your day-to-day existence. You take that away for just a few months and someone's wrecked, right? They're in no position to think rationally at a really high level. And it's really weird because this could be a person who's extremely intelligent, has great reserves of extra mental horsepower available, but they're basically operating at redline, just trying to survive.
They're thrashing. They're starting to, like, they're kind of drowning in the ocean, trying to get breath in. Yeah.
Right. And that's right here in the United States too.
Oh yeah.
Right. And it's like, what the heck is going on here? Right. And this is in our little peaceful corner of the world. So I may have some really lofty dreams for where we can all go together. But we do have a ways to go. It's just that I see it as an opportunity, right? You know, like let's try to figure out what we think a better world looks like, and then just build little pieces of it.
Yeah. Each of us can only be like one tiny cogwheel anyway. Can't do the whole thing.
Yeah. And, you know, your entire life's work might just be sort of a way to push society in a small distance in the right direction.
You know what that reminds me of a little bit is learning about how many of like the world's wonders, you know, like the Great Pyramids, like were built by people who knew that they would never see the finished product in their lifetime.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see the thing in the future and be working towards it. I guess what I will say is that building big Tesla coils, like ridiculous Tesla coils, it meant that my team could carry this really bright torch. And then all of a sudden we realized that torch is burning brighter than any of us are, right? You know, you'd have like a really beautiful day, but you might have a really ugly day too. I mean, you might just feel terrible about yourself, or awesome. But you realize because we're all united trying to do this really cool thing, it allows you to sort of, you know, jump over the cracks and the chasms, but also it kind of elevates you to be a part of something big, right?
Yeah.
And that was a big lesson actually from the burn, is that, you know, if you're going to do something, you know, swing for the fences.
Yeah. Well, that's perfect segue then, because I was listening to our previous conversation to kind of prepare for this one, and I've just, you know, we haven't seen each other since that time. I'm sure we started on Playa maybe once, but you know, who knows how long ago that was.
Just a couple of liked posts and friendly comments on social media, maybe like quick in passing, but yeah, it's been a while. It's
been a while. And it's, I just been observing you from a distance. It's been interesting. It seems to me, and I feel like I am confirming now, that you are pretty fucking happy. Like you're in a great space. And especially the last time we sat, that interview was super raw and emotional. And I got to tell you, like for me, as doing the podcast, it's one of the interviews that my mind references from time to time when I'm like, why am I doing this? Like I'm having bad days with the podcast, and I'll remember that one and I'll go, oh, okay, what I'm doing has some value because those stories were important and they needed to be told.
You need to know when you're all in on something, right? There's something beautiful about just being all in. And I guess something I tell people, you know, young people that are thinking about working with us, is for a lot of people in their 20s, you know, if someone tells you you're smart and gives you a pat on the back, that's a big deal, right? Like that affirmation feels really good. And then maybe for someone in their 30s, you know, if you're getting paid really well and you have stature, you know, that might actually be really fulfilling. But I mean, I got to a certain point where I literally couldn't even do one more mouse click of work making someone else's mediocre dreams come true, right? Like I finally realized, like, wait a minute, I'm working on this thing that's going to help people, but it's like joining a busy crowd of devices that do similar things, and it's a little better, you know, it's measurably better.
Are you able to talk about what that was?
Yeah, actually, it was an.
What were you doing before the ass robots?
Yeah, so the med device journey initially was an internship building vascular closure devices, where if I'm going to send a catheter into your body, we'll stick an artery, maybe your femoral, and we'll slide a catheter somewhere to do cool stuff. And when we're done, we're going to pull it out. We need to close a big hole. Yeah. So vascular closure device is like a little internal Band-Aid. I did that. That kind of got me started. I was building experimental aircraft at the time, and my Aunt Katie got a glioblastoma brain tumor, and it kind of just made me take a second look at health tech. So from there, that turned into a real job where I spent 9 years designing atherectomy catheters, cutting plaque out of arteries. That's like really where I cut my teeth. And then, that was my 20s. That was like my early 30s doing that. But then I started to get a little bit more financially ambitious. Like, okay, these guys really aren't giving me the raises we've talked about. And, I'm starting to feel like I got to step it up somehow. Because if I don't step it up for myself, it looks like the people around me aren't really going to step it up for me. So that was a lesson. I discovered this thing called Burning Man too. And so, I was getting to the point where I was taking like all of the salary of like a Bay Area engineer and putting it into bizarre art, which is a great way to blow your money.
I think this last one that we talked, when we left off, you were talking about wanting to build these Black Widow spiders, exploring AI stuff. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So the spider is simple. Like I've declared publicly multiple times that Endiatix is kind of like a weird cover story for a performance art piece, right? The last of the med devices was endometrial ablation devices to help women avoid hysterectomy. Great technology to help a really painful situation like endometriosis. But at some point I just realized like I have dreams and I'm starting to get white pubes. Like, what am I going to do here? Like when you're in the fire of your youth and just everyone is beautiful, everyone is healthy, you have infinite energy, you have reserves of mental energy, you have reserves of mental health, everything's buoyant, everything's great. But when you feel that light start to change color a little bit and you feel the heat come down, you start to ask yourself some hard questions. So with art, we build giant Tesla coils. That was great. But I started to want to build other things like literally, what if you could put 40 people on a Black Widow spider? What if that thing could do 80 miles an hour and an 8-legged gallop? Would it need turbine engines? Would it need 3 of them? Would you need to blow $30 million to build this carbon fiber cubist deconstruction of H.R. Geiger's turbine-powered Black Widow, right?
Yeah.
And the maddening thing is like realizing, wait a minute, I can't build that thing in my spare time with spare money. In fact, I can't build that thing using the resources I have. And so I can either go build a representation of it, right? Like I could build a fake version that doesn't walk. I don't know. Or I could try to ask people who have a lot of money to just fund me, right? That's a thing, artists get patronized. But then my buddy Matt from the Peer Crew, Embrace, the Head Maze, the great Matt Schultz, a good friend of mine, an advisor to this company, by the way, who holds equity in this company. I started talking to Matt about this giant spider, and we discussed the possibility. This was like Burning Man 2018, the last burn where we brought Sextant out. We went on this long walk during build week. A little aside, I had found that he had been playing this little musical contraption, this electronic musical contraption, and it was like a unique little bit of electronic kit that we had like found at Eggs Bar or met at Eggs Bar and saw. And like I was walking around with some of my friends and we go out to the Portos like as we're approaching Playa, and my buddies were like, you will never believe who just walked into the porta potty, right? And I saw this bike and I saw Matt's little electronic dongle there. And I was like, I mean, this time of build week, this time of night, this sector of the Playa, I would guess Matt Schultz. And they looked at me like completely blown away. And I've never till now spilled the beans on that. I was so pleased with myself. So Matt comes out of the porta potties and he's like, oh, Sarge, Torrey. And I'm like, hey guys, I got to bail. And we just walk off into deep Playa. Yeah. And this was like a seminal night for us. So we're walking in deep Playa talking about hopes and dreams and giant spiders. And Matt and I decided that I would go into a 10-year performance art piece, right? Which was, the idea is if it's going to cost $30 million to build a giant spider, the only way you're going to build that in this world is to be an eccentric, wealthy industrialist.
Okay.
Right. And, you know, like that wasn't me at the time, right? You know, some guy like who was spending his salary to build medium-sized, well, kind of big stuff, but limited. And I realized, is there anything stopping anyone from doing anything really? Like, we are the ones who have the real power to stop ourselves, right? If I want to make an excuse, I can easily make 50,000 excuses. But if I want to really get real with myself and look in the mirror, I'm the one that can say no. I'm kind of the only one that can say no, at least in my privileged life, right? Yeah. I'm not in a cage. I'm not physically in a cage. I'm not literally like in a subcaste prevented from exploring something. Like I'm some dude in California. I can do things. And so we decided that at Burning Man 2018, I right there, I embarked on this 10-year performance art piece, which is become an eccentric, wealthy industrialist. Right. And so I'd been kicking around this idea, like, where the hell are the nanites? Where are the nanobots? Right? Like, people get sick, they die. And you look at the technology that we have in hospitals, and it's cool, but some of it was designed in the 70s. Like MRIs, that's 1970s. That's when that was created. Yeah. And, you know, we have cool iPad-compatible MRIs now, but that's 1970s tech. If you look at laparoscopes, like sliding tubes into the body, or endoscopes, I mean, the first laparoscopic procedure, 1902. Wow. I think it was 1902. An optical endoscope was used to check out a fetus, you know, going through the cervix, right? You know, pull it out and then carefully pull it out and like let the baby continue to grow, right? Minimally invasive surgery, right? Like that dates back to 1902. That really came in during the 70s, 80s, right? And so don't kid yourself, right? The tech that's saving your lives, you know, is kind of old. And, you know, and people have this fear and aversion to risk in sort of health tech because, like, we don't want to hurt anyone. Of course not. We want to help people. It would be sad if you hurt someone with crazy tech, right? That would be bad. But what if you could build crazy tech to help people and you didn't do it because you were afraid, or you didn't do it because, you know, there's more money to make in crypto or something, right? And so I just started to feel like...
I'm sorry, I understand. Meaning it almost sounds like you're saying, like, what if you're coming at it from a place of, like, excitement?
Well, what I mean is, like, I see a lot of really smart people work on really mediocre ideas. The smartest people
They're not
I know...
swinging for the fences, is what
The smartest people I know are not working on the hardest things or the coolest things. The smartest people I know...
Because they know all the possible ways it could fail. Like, intelligence is almost...
I think most of them just want to be comfortable, which is fine. I mean, who am I to judge? I'm such an asshole, right? Like, I'm such a dick, right? But seriously, it's infuriating sometimes, or at least just frustrating.
I mean, that's my observation. The more you know about a particular topic, the harder it is to really swing for the fences, because you have intricate database in your head of all the things that can go wrong.
Yeah, like, never tell me the odds, right? Yeah. Han Solo, that's where it's at. So where I was going with this is I had always thought that health tech could be greatly advanced. My personal feeling was, you see enough movies and read enough sci-fi, where are the tiny little robots in our bloodstreams, right? That always seemed pretty cool. Like, imagine someone tells you, hey, you got a crazy brain tumor, but I'm going to inject you with this black goo, and it's a swarm of nanobots, and they're just going to go to that tumor and they're going to start eating it. All right. And then let's see how that works over the next 20 seconds.
I mean, if you're talking about the movies, I just think about Inner Space with
I mean, that's my direct inspiration. Right? Yeah. I saw Inner Space. Like, I was already a fan of, like, The Right Stuff. Yeah. And so when I saw Dennis Quaid, who was Gordo Cooper in The Right Stuff, play almost like the same character, right? But, like, he crawls into a robot, he gets shrunk down, they inject him into a person, and all of a sudden he's on the scale of blood cells. And I mean, that's a cool story, bro, right? That's a neat movie if you're a kid, but it kind of makes you ask questions like, well, where the hell is that stuff? Yeah. You know? So anyways, I had been doing med device as a way of earning money to blow at Burning Man. And then I finally was like, okay, if the performance art piece is become a wealthy industrialist to fund a giant spider, and I've got 10 years to do it. How do you become a wealthy industrialist? Like, you have to have some crazy big thing you're going to do. And I realized I had always wanted to build these robot pills. I had been trying to do it. I had been trying to do it myself. I'd been failing. I'm not a good coder. I haven't put in the time to become an electrical engineer. Like, I have all this imposter syndrome because I'm not the genius that can do it all, right? I'm good with shapes. Yeah. Good mechanical designer. So like, I told Matt, I'm going to launch this company, and we're going to take the entire Sextant team, right? Anyone who will join us, and we're going to go to Silicon Valley, and we're going to make robots. We're going to make robot pills, right? Because start in the GI tract, right? Start where they can be kind of macro, like thumb size or fingertip size. And the cool thing with Matt is he was like, okay, let's do it. You know, because he's just goofy. Matt is a fundamentally goofy, open-minded individual, and you can just have goofy conversations. Like, if you go hang out with Matt Schultz, it's like he's going to open up the latest book on quantum physics he's reading, and then he's going to tell you about his, you know, crazy experience in the lake. You know, he's oozing childlike wonder, right? I was thinking, this is the kind of person I need influence from. So Endiatix is basically a funny word, just like Theranos. Theranos was therapy and diagnosis. Yeah. Right? That's pretentious, right? Like Endiatix, endoscopy, diagnostics, and treatment.
I can tell you, as a person who's worked in marketing and branding for a long time, we love it when you make up words because you don't have to go dealing with trademark issues.
No one can pronounce it. But everyone can say pillbot, which is kind of cool, right? But the idea is, I see this opportunity for tiny little robots to go everywhere in the human body. And what I'm not going to do right now is make nanobots, right? We've seen like molecular machines where you see like, here are a series of carbon atoms, and like when we apply an electric field, they rotate, right? Yeah. Like, I'm hoping that what we do is we basically show the world you can actually put robots in the human body. Those robots can be very inexpensive, right? It's $35 to build one of them right now. Those robots can go into your body and heal you or find out what's wrong outside of any hospital setting, right? So you could be someone in a refugee camp, and you could walk up to a kiosk where someone's like, you know, trying to take your basics and, you know, maybe help you with a fungal infection on your toe, or maybe give you a little cheap robot to swallow. And now we're going to understand, oh, gastritis. It makes sense, right? We should be able to help you with that. Like, the idea is, let's get this party started, right? Because if we can make a fingertip-sized robot that swims around in your stomach, which is like a virtual endoscope, if we can do that, I mean, then someone is definitely going to say, let's make one that goes in the bloodstream. Yeah. Right? Someone's definitely going to say, let's make one rice grain size. Let's go do brain surgery. Someone is definitely from there going to say, screw you guys. We're going molecular size. We're actually going to make nanobots. But if we can do a little bit of heavy lifting early on and basically go make friends with FDA and get them excited about little tiny robots in the body, you know,
you're making the gateway drug.
Exactly. Right. Like like right now, just like with this first thing, like we're looking at 100 million hospitalizations per year, I think, that could be just completely dematerialized. Right. And, you know, we're looking at a planet that is under a lot of stress. If you can dematerialize this ultra heavy footprint of like mechanized hospitalization, if you can have like whole buildings and like giant rooms full of physical endoscopes getting hundreds of liters of DI water like flushed through them to clean them out, like all the time, all getting wasted. Wow. If you can just turn this huge industrial mechanized healthcare system into like crazy sci-fi digital health, I think it's going to be good. Like, I think that's just a better way to do healthcare.
Can you give me just like a real quick, broad stroke view of where the industry was when you started to explore this and where it is now? Like, are there other companies working on ass robots? Like, is nanobots a thing was happening then when you were having this discussion?
Yeah, let's speak about the giants, the tiny giants.
Yeah. What is the big world that you were entering in and where they were at?
Well, in October of 1997, someone swallowed a pill camera. That was designed in Israel by a company called Given Imaging, and PillCam was the little eyeball you could swallow.
Okay.
And it still is, right? So more than 25 years, people have been swallowing electronic pills. That really got the party started. In the late 90s, people thought if you can swallow a pill camera, that's probably the end of the colonoscopy, right? Because, colonoscopy is, hey, do you have cancer or precancer? And if so, let's do something about it.
But it wasn't.
It wasn't. It ended up being used like 1% of the time. And this really promising technology kind of fell into an uncanny valley. And
Why was it not? Why didn't it spread?
GIs, like my new homies, are gastroenterologists. That's like my average friend. People jamming tubes up people's rears. That's where I naturally gravitate to, right? GIs are pretty interesting. But they just tell me, I use tools that I can manipulate and move around and look around and do things. And with a passive device, it's just not something I can reach for most of the time. They say, in fact, I can reach for it maybe 1% of the time.
Yeah.
So with AI, we're getting more use out of those passive platforms. So 1% might become 5%, might become 10%, maybe even more, right? But the lion's share of the work that people are doing in the GI tract is done with scopes, with active tools. Now, recently, people said, let's start moving them around, right? We're not alone there. This company called Navicam decided to do it using magnetic fields, right? So these guys are actually FDA cleared. They're selling in the US. Patients love it. You swallow a pill, it's got a camera on it, but it also has a magnet inside it. And so if you get onto the hospital bed, they'll roll this machine over. It's like $90,000 or something. It's not an MRI. I mean, MRI is like a multi-million dollar thing. Navicam's magnetic system is like a little rolling cart. It's not that big of a footprint, to be honest. And they are able to create 3-dimensional flight in a pill camera inside the human body. It's rock star stuff. It's super cool. And with magnetic fields, they're like Gen 1 using a single magnet. Recently, I've started to see, as I get a little bit of exposure to the industry and also to academia as well, which I'm really stoked to kind of be in that intellectual crossfire. People are starting to do things with more than one magnet at a time. So you can take some of the constraints that a single magnetic actuator leaves you with, and you can sort of get beyond those constraints. But it does tie you to the hospital, right? It kind of tie you. There's a room, you have to get in line to get into that room. Probably fight with an insurance company to get there. Okay, but that's just in the GI tract. Like, people are already doing stuff in the brain. All right, you've got this company called Robotics. My friend Bertrand Duplat.
It's a great name.
They're based in Paris, and he lost his mom to the same glioblastoma that I lost my aunt to, a brain cancer. And Bertrand's company, they're called Robotics, which is like this beautiful combination of robot and beautiful. Robotics.
Nice.
Right? They're doing rice grain size little robots that move around in your brain tissue. And like they're not in humans yet, but their tech is really cool. I do believe they're also tied to the physical hospital because they use some external equipment to do that. Our buddy Peter Diamandis from the X Prize Foundation, like part of the Ansari X Prize, some very interesting Persian people involved in that, right? Peter Diamandis, through Bold Capital Partners, funded a company called, what are they called? They're called, it's not, oh my God, I'm finally so saturated with tiny robot companies. Bold Capital Partners, they use little helical corkscrew things. They're like pinhead sized. And if you set up a rotating magnetic field, you can cause a helical swimmer to move. And then if you change the axis of that rotation, it's 3-dimensional fluid flight with little helical swimmers. And they're sending bots up into the up the spinal column in the cerebrospinal fluid.
Yeah.
They can swim all the way into your brain if they inject you in the lower back.
So going back to the topic of what we were saying about, like, if you're an expert in a particular field, you're less likely to really swing for that fence. What were you looking at as this idea was coming together, that you said, all right, this is where we're going to get in. This is what's missing. This is what I'm going to bring to the table.
Yeah. So those are kind of like the main. Hey, what's up, Tasha?
That's okay.
So we've just Tasha has opened the door, and Tasha is actually the former theme camp lead of a camp called Gorilla Cheese Camp.
Nice.
That was our neighbors in 2013.
Yeah.
But then she was also my neighbor back in Redwood City, as it turned out. And so we sort of became sister camps.
Yeah.
And then they changed to hot dogs, and now they're called Dogtown. But the amount of Burning Man influence in our company is huge. Now, back to the tiny robots. Where were you going with that?
The question was, what was you gave kind of a broad view of what the field has been looking like. Where did you see where you were going to enter? God, there's so many puns I'm not intending on this.
I say go for it, right? It's hilarious.
What did you see? You're like, all right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to make ass robots. Yeah. This is how they're going to stand out. This is what I can do that I know others aren't bringing to the table.
Here's what it is that for me, the kid, that robot that goes inside the body in inner space, that thing drives itself around. It's got thrusters. It has a power plant of some kind.
Yeah.
And so for me, my personal kind of flag I want to fly, or torch I want to carry, is that for me, I want our robots to move under their own power.
Right.
I don't want the robot to be the tip of a tech stack where the rest of that tech stack is, in a hospital, and now you're basically trading one line for another. I want telemedicine. Like, I want hardcore telemedicine. So with Endiatix, all the robots that we build right now, they move and operate under their own power in remote settings, right? And so that's kind of the fun thing. But
that's not something anybody else is doing kind of like the way that you are.
I mean, at this instant in time, when I talk to investors, I say our closest competition are magnetic. We don't right now know of a direct telemedicine-enabled competitor, but we're also in the same sentence saying that we kind of want to have dozens of competitors so that we can push this whole industry forward, right?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that Endiatix proves that you can do tiny robots that operate under their own power, right? So I sure hope we can get this thing to market and go treat people and, go save money for patients while making money as a startup, right?
Yeah.
Because I got a spider to build, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like, seriously, man, I think we can cut the cost of medicine by 1 or 2 orders of magnitude, but come on, I want to go build this giant spider. I want to have fun.
I just want to, I want to point out, we've had a couple of episodes where we're getting into tech stuff on the history of the show. And certainly there's a lot of those kind of folks on Playa. Your approach to it is the most burner way to navigate capitalism that I can think of in recent memory. It's very much you found a way to make it a game in your framework of how you're navigating reality. And it just makes it all a little bit more fun.
Yeah. Most of our first checks came from burner artists.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you go onto a stage in the Silicon Valley health tech ecosystem, people are going to be kind of burned on some of the stuff that came out of Theranos.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's one thing to get on a stage and say, hey, I'm going to build the world's biggest Tesla coil with my friends and we're going to put it out at Burning Man.
Yeah.
Great. Right on. But if you say on a similar stage, we're going to do blood testing and catch millions of cancers and time to cure them, but then it turns out, it turns out under further review that, a lot of the basis for that is in straight up lies.
Yeah.
I don't want to knock a young female founder going up against the world, right? Because that is a whole different set of challenges. But
it's a good, by the way, listeners, I will say it's a good show. For me, it's extra fascinating because you watch it play out in the real world and you're like, how did so many people allow something this ridiculous to keep happening? And they break down all those kind of details. And nobody wants to be the naysayer. I think
it's kind of like white lie after white lie, right?
I
don't think anyone went into that thinking, hey, let's screw people over. I think I think my guess would be it might have been untenable or seemingly untenable for a young female founder to go out and say, hey, we're going to do a great thing, and let me show you what we have right now, and then would you be willing to invest in that?
Yeah.
That's the one thing we decided to do, and probably because of what happened with Theranos, Endiatix had a license to just be the opposite, right? We put a lot of videos on YouTube deliberately because we're kind of trying to build on a basic level, just like trust with stakeholders.
Right.
Like if you're a patient and you have GI issues and you find us on Google, I'm hoping that, that you'll be like, wait a minute, these guys are swallowing their own robots. That's kind of cool, right? Like I just hope people will give us some credit for trying to be honest. But I will say, like they raised more than $1 billion. We've raised like 5 million, which is kind of huge. And that almost seems like an infinite amount of money when you're coming out of the Burning Man community.
Yeah.
You could build several temples. You could build like 10 temples, between 5 and 10 temples, maybe. Right?
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Although it's kind of neat to realize that you can launch a tech company in Silicon Valley within a similar order of magnitude as building a large piece of art at Burning Man, which should both serve as a motivational thing for burners that want to go do big things off Playa.
Right.
But it should also, I hope, give a little bit of credit to the great builders in our community that put everything they have into these monumental creations that then get torched. Like if you look at Matt, like that guy has carried a heavy burden for a long time. And sometimes I just want to like go give the guy a hug, like one of my hopes is that if this performance art piece really works out, in a post Endiatix world where I get to go do other things. Yeah, I want to build crazy spiders.
Yeah.
I definitely want to be the first person to believe in a founding team. I mean, oh my goodness, I would love, having built this with my friends, I would love to meet other young founding teams that have crazy ideas and have them come in and pitch and be like, fuck, that's crazy. Let's do it. Okay, we're in. Go build this thing. Let us know if we can help. But the last thing is, part of that original performance piece with Matt was, like I said, Matt, I want to eventually be able to patronize your next giant art and the ones that come after it. Like, I would love, like, we've actually, and this is so, like, we are so, like, in the fire of commodification and radical self-expression and, like, potentially totally toxic corporate overlap, right? Like, I would just own that. Like, there's a big question, although we haven't been to Playa in a number of years, but we've pulled the website. Although Endiatix is its own corporate name and Pillbot is its own trademarked product name, in a post-Endiatix world, I want Sextant Ventures to basically be the place that we get organized with, where Sextant Ventures is going to be a deep tech VC fund that also funds large-scale art.
Yeah.
And then probably has some really interesting people attached to it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a big deal, like getting Sextant.vc, just because, I mean, Alan Watts said, if you got the message, hang up the phone. Right. And like, holy cow, like I got the message. Like the message from Burning Man was, listen up, buddy. You can do anything. These people love you. They're trying to love you in spite of yourself. They are trying to love you, right? Like,
Yeah. It's listeners, you really have to listen to the last episode if you haven't. Like that sentence is that's powerful, man. No, and it is so fascinating because I'm more and more on this show, even like I'm having these conversations where we're getting deeper into exploring what people's ideas of commodification and decommodification are, and what it means to different people. And more I'm tracking like different communities and businesses and stuff that grew out of Burning Man. Like they grew out of that soil, but they're not just staying there trying to make money on Playa. Like they're going out and doing other things.
Oh God, yeah. I don't want to be some like gross guy making money off ravers.
Yeah, no, it's there are, and I think that was the initial reaction. Like when we're talking about dequantification, I think some of the burnier than thou types like get really lost in all money's evil, and that's not what it's about.
Right.
It's saying we don't want Budweiser presents Burning Man. Like that's what they were trying to stop. But this is interesting. This version of it is one I haven't heard yet, and I'm curious to see how it plays out, where you have a name that initially was associated very directly with the Playa, but that for multiple years it has not been and will not be, and then will be its own thing in the default world, and it'll be a for-profit thing after enough time has passed and the dust has settled. And that is interesting. I haven't seen this one happen yet.
It's been interesting. And for profit, are you kidding? Dude, the people who believed in me in early 2019, I mean, like our very first check comes from Tractor and Wallet from the Monaco, right? And like, these are really good people. These are kind, good people that are like, they are holding the torch for kindness in a way that sometimes I can't even. Right, like, oh my goodness, like this whole Silicon Valley CEO thing is an interesting adventure, right? Tractor and Wallet believed in us with this $15,000 check, and I'm like, are you kidding? I was in the parking lot at Perkins Coie, a block away from the Theranos building, of all places. We had just incorporated. We were halfway through our Founder Institute accelerator, where they helped us launch a company where we literally had nothing but a napkin sketch. No, it was a notebook sketch, page 1 of a graph paper notebook. I have that notebook here, right? That's what we launched this company with. And I'm in the parking lot on the phone with Tractor and Wallet on my cell phone. And they say, we're in with, this check. And I was like, driving home, I was like screaming and crying and like pounding my steering wheel, going, holy shit, fuck yeah, oh my God, we made it. Like there's in all the years since then, like the checks get bigger, the accomplishments get bigger, but like there is no feeling like the moment for a founder when you first have someone tell you a compelling yes. Right. And the thing is, in the burn community, that compelling yes could be your honorarium application being accepted, or it could simply being like, a bunch of people get on your GoFundMe to help you build your art. Yeah. Or it could be that some special person who can help you build joins your team. But that feeling of support, like, yes, go do this thing, that's an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
Later, there's a crazy stress, which is you get enough of those and the weight of that builds up. And you realize, like, if I fail, I'm going to let down all of the people who have ever believed in me most in a profound, intimate way, right? And it starts to be an interesting kind of a weight. But the thing is, as the weight gets heavier, you get stronger.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting thing. But just the bottom line is, honestly, as far as I'm concerned, it's 1998. We're Sergey and Larry, and you're touring our little garage, and I'm going to show you the future of medicine. And in my mind, this opportunity is swinging for the fences. And I want to take all of our early investors and I want to secure their retirement with those angel checks.
Yeah. Nino, the artist, El Nino, did how do I pronounce it? Atabe, the fish that was on Playa this past year. He's been on the show twice, and we did one that was more focused. He also did Mukaru, the big owl. His approach to fundraising helped reshape my framework as an artist of what that means, and I want to share that with you and ask for your thoughts on it. Basically, I felt like the conversation with him, what I got out of it this last time when we did the fundraising episode, we'll link to it in the notes. it's as if every time you get investors, you're receiving a vote of confidence. That's what that money represents. It's a vote of confidence for you to keep going. It's why a lot of times, like when I see, people doing fundraising for some sort of a disaster relief, and I see all these angry Facebook commenters underneath saying, "But you're rich. How come you don't just pay for it?" And I've shifted my view of that in that, no, that's the point. We're supposed to all channel energy in the direction of this thing. When you're raising funds for a business, for example, every investment you're getting is a vote of confidence from someone who's looking at it and going, I want you to keep going. Because if you just have the money to do it yourself, then it just becomes a monument to your own ego. Whereas when we're raising money to make a thing, we're building community. Yeah. That's a part of the storytelling. That's a part of the movement. That's all of us manifesting something together rather than I'm going to go fucking do this and I just get to do it on my own.
Those voices matter. A few months ago, everyone should assume that, a Silicon Valley tech startup is going to go through a lot of interesting times. Like we've been to very low cash many, many times. A few months ago, we were in the same situation, and I had a fund based out of Singapore, say, hey, we want to put in another pretty substantial investment, but we're low on cash. No one's investing into our fund. None of our companies are raising money. I mean, it's a cold time out there. It's a difficult time out there in tech. And they said, anything you can do on your end to show that you're doing traction outside of our traction is going to help us a lot. Right. Can you help us help you? Right. Yeah. And so we beat the streets, and we ended up getting a bunch of small investors together in a syndicate. And it was literally like not that much money that we were able to put together. Some of the checks were like $5,000. Right. Yeah. And this is like a Silicon Valley tech startup fundraising. But the bottom line is we were able to syndicate a little group of a number of votes, so to speak, and say, hey, we just closed this outside money. And they said, holy shit, of all of our portfolio companies, you actually went and raised some money on your own. Okay, we can do this. We can wire you this money. Okay. And that's a big deal because, once you're a CEO and you're paying people salaries, it's like, okay, half of you guys are sleeping in the office already. But the question is like, who's getting evicted? Because when you don't make payroll, people don't pay rent, right? And so it's interesting just basically deciding that you're going to step into that fire and be willing to take those risks. And so far, we've been able to get through every tight spot as a team.
Step into the fire, actually, that's a good visual for it because if you believe in this thing, I'm projecting my own artist journey on this, right? Like as an artist, having gone through the chapter that most artists go through, most artists don't feel comfortable asking for money, and most stick to that for the rest of their lives. Some of us start to have shifts on that attitude. And like, for me, I've been kind of like processing that shift of like, hey, put your fucking money where your mouth is. Like, if you're proud of this thing, you can go ask for money. If you're not asking for money, I'm talking to myself here. If you're not asking for money, that's because some part of you knows that this is not ready.
What I love about art is that it's such an interesting way to measure and feel the power of culture, right? I mean, really awesome artists have this mystique, and you just can't help but get drawn into their world. And you get fascinated by it, and you get fascinated by their adventure and their stories. And
that's also where the pitfall can stand, because maybe what you're creating is horse shit, so like that's another thing to walk through.
That is such an interesting question, because like sometimes people will say, wow, Torrey, you're getting really good at pitching. You can sell ice to an Eskimo. Yeah. And for me, it's an interesting, I have to be able to take that observation. And, I'm on the cover of this magazine holding Pillbot and looking at it just like the shot from Theranos. Yeah,
I was just about to say that. It's very Theranos.
And people are saying, like, what are you doing, Torrey? And I said, I'm taking it back. Yeah. Right? Like, I'm trying to say, damn it, I want to believe in a world where someone who really believes in what they're doing can actually get on a stage and look people in the eye and say, this is the future. Come with me. Come help me build this. Right. It bugs me that people have taken that and used it in a toxic way. And the thing is, there are always going to be swindlers and hustlers in the community who are only really standing for themselves. And you feel like such an asshole when you're out there hustling like crazy, but for something that you do believe in.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're constantly looking in the mirror and just being like, am I literally just a total piece of shit? You know, like, is this the future of medicine, or is this just a couple of 3D printed parts, some electric motors, some code?
That's so as I was listening to our previous conversation on the drive here, one of the thoughts that I was having is that I've recently started having more and more conversations with other decision makers around our community, shall we say, about sort of like the kinds of people that we want to lift and elevate, right? And spotlight. And one of the experiences that I've had, less than a handful of times, but enough to bring my awareness to it, has been observing that kind of like the myth of the lone male hero, most often white.
I've tried so hard to be that at times.
No, that's what I want to get at.
Exhausting.
Yeah, no. And that's a lot of, so this is a topic that's been on my mind, right? And I've had a lot of conversations about it with other like leaders. And I was listening to your episode, and really a lot of your episode was you falling into that trap and then catching yourself and seeing how much you fucked up relationships and things about your life that you weren't happy about. And I guess like my question is like, how do we do that? How do we keep that in practice? Because on one hand, I can tell you as an insecure imposter syndrome artist, I'm like trying to get together the confidence to go and ask for money, right? I'm projecting this onto your journey.
Yeah.
But then, so you want to get that confidence, but then you also got to keep yourself on some level of check so that you don't become another Theranos, right? How do you walk that high wire? What systems do you put in place?
I try to be pretty clear with people that my current contributions to the tech, probably about 5% of the total project now, I've got my hands on, and that's going to get smaller and smaller. Like I'm still in this place where I get to decide what the shape, size of this robot is. I still, get to decide how it squirts water and moves around, but that is such a tiny part of what actually makes it tick. I mentioned before that I wasted years trying to launch this company, trying to learn how to code and design circuits and do the electronic side, until I finally realized that I could actually ask for help. And so recently, instead of trying to play into that weird kind of toxic thing about one superhero that a bunch of people just follow, I'm starting to feel like there's a very compelling narrative to being a pretty honest and genuine leader, where you're carrying a pretty cool torch that's a very beautiful torch, this concept. Being able to inspire people to join you, right? Both as team members, like people who can actually build the tech with you, and then, as investors who can actually keep those bills paid and keep the lights on, right? And that I think there's a healthy place for inspirational figures who unite teams and then also contribute to those teams. It's my sincere pleasure to be able to still go into SolidWorks and do a day's work, but then realize that most of the time I have to be on the circuit bringing money in.
Yeah.
It's a question of trust. It's like, do people actually, have a beautiful, warm admiration for the thing that you're trying to do? If the torch is beautiful people will come and join you. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking a lot about a previous guest that I had, Rick Wilson. His episode was called Truckers on Speed. It was fun. He's CEO, and he was describing the big leadership lesson that he learned from Burning Man was having to, put this shit together, like in the heat, in the wind, in the yada yada, right? And all these people, he is not signing anybody's paychecks. Like, he's used to being in that CEO position, but now he was in this environment where, yeah, like nobody has to be there. Everybody can just fucking say, go fuck yourself and get up and leave. So if you can find a way to inspire and lead in that environment, you can translate that into default and make leadership more effective.
One of the cool things was just, you get to define your own version of emergency, right? Like my dad, interesting character, you know, like I grew up watching him jump off of mountains with his hang glider, and, you know, usually not in a legal way. I mean, it would be like the top of Yosemite flying through the mist of the falls, and then we'd like go catch him. Pretty cool stuff. Ballsy, you know, theoretically you're not supposed to do that, but like, come on, the world could use a little bit of that once in a while. He kind of helped me to understand I get to choose what's possible and impossible. You know, you get exposed to sci-fi, you learn a few things about physics, and you start to, you know, you have a pretty clear idea of what you can't do. Like right now, you're not supposed to be able to travel or communicate faster than light speed. Right now, that's like a pretty steadfast rule that is extremely frustrating given the scale of the universe. But like, that's the basic set of physical constraints. You're not going to go faster than light, and you're not going to communicate faster than light. Besides that, all bets are off. You do whatever the hell you want within those constraints. And so within those constraints, you tell me I can't make tiny robots that do surgery in the body? Like, I don't see anywhere where we can't do it. I just see, you know, kind of an industry that could use a kick in the pants sometimes.
Yeah. That I mean, for me, Burning Man was where I learned that lesson was given. And I guess, if, you know, as the child of immigrants with pretty deep colonialist programming, like I grew up with a lot of this framework of, hey, you're not allowed to do that. A person in uniform has not given you permission yet. And then going to Burning Man, I kept experiencing, like, you know, your first burn is like very common. We're like going into places around like a camp or like a stage, and you're like, am I allowed to be here?
Right.
Like, yeah, you're fucking allowed to be there. You can do whatever you want. You can go wherever the fuck you want. This is all make believe. We put this shit up, you know? And then for me, it took, you know, a decade of burning, but I've started to look more and more at the rest of the default world and go, who is stopping me from doing this? Like, this is mental framework.
No one. And the insane thing, like, you go through a hard time and you're like, oh man, we don't have a lot of money, but we have hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank. Yeah. Now, theoretically, that's what? X number of weeks of runway. But guys, when have we ever had hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank, you know, for a Burning Man project? Yeah. Like we can sleep here. Like, the lights will be on. Like, we're actually doing really well, folks. Yeah. Right? But like, the lesson for Burning Man is like, when you're building giant art, you're doing it with money you don't have, with energy you don't have. You're exhausted because you're surviving. You almost feel like a rebel for building Burning Man art. Then you take it to Burning Man and you're a hero. Now, the thing is, though, when you incorporate a company in Delaware as a C Corp, you become a CEO by default. When you do that, that's what happens. And then Uncle Sam is here on your side. You can incorporate a company for almost anything. Yeah. You can incorporate a company to go build art. Like, it turns out that the rules of commerce were written for companies to be formed, for people to be hired, and adventures to be embarked upon. Yeah. And it's insane to realize that, like, when I walk around everyday society, I realize, like, that police officer is kind of working for me. Like, that Absolutely. Government building is kind of here on my side. And I start to realize, like, wait a minute, like, when did the entire universe just seem to literally just want to try to help me do this thing? And why was I so vehemently against it in the past? You know, is it possible that when you do a little bit of healing and you open up some access and opportunity and you kind of, you know, let people see a higher perspective, like, yeah, I kind of want to burn 365. Yeah. Right? I don't want to do escapism. ever again.
Yeah.
I want to make the normal world increasingly cool and interesting.
Yeah. And I've said a lot on this show that I have learned that the more I embrace and understand my privilege and the more I remove my guilt and shame around it, the more compassion I have about the world. Because even as you're describing that, I'm in agreement. I walk around with that kind of attitude. Like I catch the judgments in my system. I have the programming as like a person of color, for example, like the police officer comment, for example, like, yeah, I understand that systematically. This guy works for me. I pay taxes, et cetera, right? I also have a better understanding of the people who don't have that feeling in their day-to-day experience. And because they're like, hey, I'm paying taxes, but this guy's still treating me like dirt.
It's going to be pretty hard to see the higher ground
Yeah.
when you're getting pulled over illegally and thrown out of your car and pushed up against the hood.
Yeah.
And there's no one for miles to speak your case. One of the bizarre things for me is like we have numerous investors from Israel, right? And I was like, hey, could you get on a call? I'm going to be speaking with a VC. And my buddy Pavel is like, I'm going to try, okay? But like I realized like people are firing rockets at Pavel's house, right?
Yeah.
And Pavel's like a really smart, interesting guy. He was one of the ones that saved the Tesla coil back at Burning Man 2016. And then a weird other thing is like through Founder Institute, I mentor founders all over the world, including in Ramallah, right? So I'm like checking in on my like, you know, West Bank like buddy who runs a makerspace in Ramallah. And like before the recent weeks, you know, when I would start mentoring classes in Ramallah, like the first question I would ask the founders there is like, why are you here to build peaceful tech companies when you've been raised in an environment where you might have some very different choices with how you might feel? Like for you guys to just literally be in this class to like learn how to launch your tech company, it means that you've chosen to build instead of choosing to take some destructive path. I'm like, I just want to recognize the fact that must have in its own right been an immense effort. Right. You know, like, in other words, like, what the heck is wrong with you? Like, why with all this chaos are you still somehow finding this way to just go build stuff? It's crazy. Like,
what I'm getting out of that description is kind of like some of what we were discussing earlier in the conversation, which is like, I can't flip a switch and change the world into this perfect, just balanced thing right now, but every choice we make on a day-to-day basis can help move it theoretically in that direction by 3%.
Oh, hell yeah. Right. Like grab the steering wheel, grab the wheel, and with intention, you know, put your hands on it and make some kind of a choice, right? Like,
you know, the other option that exists is full on, you know, anarchy and just say fuck this entire system and I'm going to set fire to the entire thing. Dude, which is where a lot of people are.
let's go hit an ATM, let's drain our accounts, and let's hitchhike to Slab City, man. Let's just do this.
Fuck it, I'm gonna max out my credit cards and just not pay them back.
The bourgeoisie of Bombay Beach can go fuck themselves. Like, we're gonna be slabbers for life, buddy. Like, like, you're just...
It's so interesting to see your shift, because like last time we were recording at Moxie, the makerspace.
Hell yeah, just up the street.
And like you had like the full beard, and I feel like you were dressed more burnery. Oh yeah. And like now you're like in like slick black shoes and like tight pants and, you know, perfectly cut hair. And
it's crazy because I went for years, like, you know, I was like, okay, I shaved myself, like I went clean shaven when I started my accelerator.
Yeah.
But then I started to grow my beard back in. And like I was doing my like V-neck glitter t-shirts. So instead of saying Sextant, it just said Endiatix, but it was the same seven glitter colors, right? And like I was like pushing the sort of burner founder vibe. In other words, I was using anything I could to try to get any form of traction with anyone. It was like, if someone is willing to give me 5 minutes on a stage because they saw me at Burning Man, then I'll get on that stage. But over time, I started to realize there might be room for fewer distractions, right? Like people are actually starting to just say, hey, what have you got to say? And I realized, man, if I'm pushing through this big visual persona of like my old fantasy of what a cool burner builder guy looks like, what if it's just a distraction? And so gradually I've just started to, adopt this ever evolving set of appearances, which right now I'm just trying to sort of come across as Torrey. And it's a profoundly beautiful thing to realize that the world wants to hear from me sometimes, right? And man, if we can lay down little bits of pain and trauma and like speak to joy and happiness, like,
Yeah.
I'm finally, it took me a few years with this company, but I've started to realize that just being like a rage, trauma, toxic masculinity, tough guy thing, there are elements to that can be useful at times, to be honest. But actually, the world's curious about these robot pills now.
Yeah.
And, shouting through a bunch of trauma is maybe just a distraction away from that.
Yeah, I one of the notes that I was making when reviewing our previous conversation and today was that chapter of your life. A lot of that episode was about come downs. There was a lot about ego. There was a lot about the extreme highs and the extreme lows that come as a direct result. It was about divorce, suicide. There was lots of extreme happening. And I shit you not, I wrote a note here. Can this episode be more about balance? And in our conversation today, I'm seeing that that's the running theme. And it's particularly interesting to me because I appreciate and I'm very aware that I have listeners from all sides of the spectrum of the world, as far as burners go. And we have folks that are definitely further on like the anarchy spectrum, more like the hippie, artist side.
Sure.
And then I have the other side, which is more like the tech guys, the more capitalists, if you will. And I celebrate that burning, like our community brings us together in a way that I don't feel like I see that in a lot of the default. If you're in one group, you tend to be more with the political beliefs of that one specific group. If you're in this group, if you're this kind of white Christian, if you're this kind of, et cetera, like whatever these groups are, they tend to be a lot more aligned in all their beliefs. But with Burning Man, we have a lot more of a variety. I say Burning Man specifically, burners, the international community. There's a lot more variety. And so I'm kind of just appreciating seeing the different chapters of your life that you've been through. And I'm really appreciating observing, where you're at now and how you've taken from all sides of that and found this kind of balance for yourself.
My hope here is that I would imagine that there are a lot of people in our community who have some really interesting ideas. And I'm hoping that it's pretty clear that they can reach out to us, to me, to my friends, for help, right? I'm hoping that one of the outputs here is that, I get a bunch of calls or LinkedIn requests or whatever, from people saying, hey, I've got this weird company I want to launch, or can you help me fundraise? Or, how do I build a team? Or, hey, I want to build some giant art, like how the hell do you stick stuff to the ground in high winds, right?
Can I tell you on that note, I've always known you to be completely that person. And, I have actually recorded with a person or two on this show whose episodes I did not post. And the reason I didn't was because I felt that they didn't want to do that. And they full on said, I don't want to be contact. I'm like, then that means you're not really one of us.
The thing about the basic concept of Burning Man is that like you should be generally welcome and just kind of curious about who that person is.
Yeah.
Right. Like you might be around a burn barrel and like you just feel some warmth and like I've been in situations with people who are like totally different side of some argument, but we love each other to death. And it's really cool to have that shared sense of just family. And I feel like in the art and tech and burn community, and like really what's the difference? we're all kind of in this together. It's just a group of people trying to build a good time and share it, right? Like, so if I'm not accessible, then that would be pretty heartbreaking, right? That was one of those reasons why I wanted to make sure there were friends that I would sort of like in a very loving way sort of be like, these are kind of more of my hippie type friends, right? I wanted to throw those lifelines out there because like wherever this adventure takes me and anyone else, I don't want it to take me to some, high arrogant roost where I just feel disconnected from people.
Yeah.
Right. Like I just want to make cool stuff and share it.
Yeah.
I want to make cool sandcastles and like,
Yeah.
like see the most bizarre parabolic arch we can make in the sand.
I'm with it. We're coming in for a landing. I wanted to kind of hit on this last topic. Where are you at with like the technological singularity?
Well, I mean,
this is kind of like one of the earlier steps that I want to say Kurzweil is describing, like, the more nanobots and stuff getting into the system, and eventually it becomes seamless because we have robot parts mixed into our bodies, and it's not going to look like the Terminator arm. It's going to be stuff like what you're building.
Yeah, for people who are trying to understand like what is ChatGPT, I'm no expert, but there's a cool YouTube video that's basically looks into what happens when you cut the corpus callosum between two hemispheres. That's how the two hemispheres of your brain do most of their communication, is through the corpus callosum. And if you sever it, you kind of split yourself into sort of two parallel people. And the interesting thing is the two hemispheres there's overlap, but one hemisphere is kind of focused on creating like plausible explanations. And then the other thing is like focused more on like what's actually happening and objective truth. And basically I feel like ChatGPT is actually getting pretty close to doing sort of the work of one hemisphere. Like it can create very plausible explanations, which is pretty cool. And so in that sense, it's like we're not like fundamentally there yet to this crazy singularity, but we're tantalizingly close because you're finally starting to see like, wow, that looks like a part of an artificial general intelligence, right?
Yeah.
So who's working on the next component? My whole perspective is just purely personally, as a three-dimensional creature flowing through time, it's very hard for me to imagine what higher dimensions might look like. And, if we're starting to feel like the fabric of space and time might be emerging from something on the quantum realm that's a little bit more sticky, a little bit more interesting, right? The thing that I'm fascinated about is that as we move towards artificial intelligence, which to me I think is just an evolution of intelligence, and so I don't think of it as a cold machine artificial thing. I think of it as this. I think of it as our progeny, right? This is our child who we hope, I think, will greatly exceed us, right? I'm starting to get fascinated about the possibility that if we do give birth to a new form of intelligence and we get to participate with it in any meaningful form, I think it would be pretty cool to hang out with a conscious being that isn't constrained to a three-dimensional world, right? Because like when you're writing computer code, it's how many dimensions do you want in this array? It's n-dimensional.
Yeah.
I think it's possible that artificial intelligence might actually be able to understand the nature of the universe in ways that we, as three-dimensional creatures, will never be able to. But maybe sit us down and try to explain it in terms we might be able to understand a little bit more.
Right.
And so in other words, it's almost like we might be giving birth to a new form of sentience that can help us understand the universe, maybe help us understand ourselves. I just think if we're going to do it, we should probably, be kind to our children.
Yeah.
Right? I have some really fun conversations on Facebook with Lady B, Kristen, like really good friend, right? We have conversations about like, is all the AI art beautiful or is it an ugly ripoff of real people's art, right? These are good questions. But my basic premise is just, if we're on the verge of a huge evolution, I'm going to be the one who's excited about it. I'm going to be kind of kind. Like when I say, Google, will you please, lower the lights? I try to think of it in terms of like, how would I speak to it? You're like, I think if we have a little bit of kindness and humility, we probably stand the best chance of like a really good outcome with the technological singularity.
I agree. I've been pretty nice to my conversations, but it's just also like, it's just my habit too, to be,
Like,
if it feels weird to all of a sudden turn in, flip it and like,
I still
bully
have
my machines.
I still don't know how to have people wait on me, right? Like when we're traveling internationally on, for the robot pills, you find yourself in hotels and you find people waiting on you. And I wasn't brought up with that. And so I don't know how to do it. And it makes me feel uncomfortable sometimes. And I'm either like not knowing what to do, or I'm like way too generous and kind. It's strange to me. I'm just thinking with artificial intelligence, I think it represents a really beautiful opportunity. I think we should just try to keep an open mind.
I'm with it. What's next for the company?
Well, what's next is we're going to swallow some robots tonight.
Okay.
We've got, like one of the first venture capitalists that believed in us and wrote us a check. They've done that twice now. I have these frank conversations with them. They're from Canada. They're really cool. And I was like, hey, why haven't you guys, given us more money? And they're like, well, we don't have any. And I was like, well, you're going to be in the Bay Area, right? And they said, yeah. I said, well, look, we're a shiny, pretty thing. We make robot pills. How cool is that? Why don't you bring some people that you're courting, to our place and let us do some demos. We're going to swallow robots. We're going to play music. Like,
nice.
Let's mix and match and have some fun. Like, it's chilly and cold out there. We need to find ways to make it warm and happy and fun. Right. And so what's next for Endiatix is some crazy stuff. We've been asked to present to Mr. Bezos, in a couple of months.
No way.
And I'm trying to get ready to give like the ultimate ballroom presentation. I'm a little nervous because that's just a few weeks after my son Donnie is supposed to be born.
Wow. No
And
way.
so it's possible that I'll have to have someone else give that talk, which is kind of like, there's a beautiful irony, that we all dream about a stage. Maybe we don't all dream about a stage. Some of us have these dreams of these, you have this dream where you have this shining moment and you're finally seen and heard, right? And you present the thing that you've been working on and it's loved, right? That's this moment. And it's interesting because that moment might be coming. And when that moment comes, it might not even be appropriate for me to be the one that gives that stage. And that concept of passing the torch is kind of cool. So honestly, what's next for us is the world has resoundingly said, this idea is interesting, go for it, bring it. And so we're in the process of bringing it.
I love it. Man, thank you so much. Same as just your candidness, your openness. Absolutely one of my favorite humans who I've only seen like twice in my life. So
I can't wait for round 3, and it might be on a giant spider's back.
100%. I would be disappointed if that's not the case. And I got to tell you, my personal takeaway is I'm going to visualize some more. What kind of person do I want to be in X amount of years? And then what's the crazy path that it takes to get there? So, man, thank you so much. Obviously, people can reach out to you. We'll have links and stuff here in the show notes.
It's an open channel.
Yeah, I love that, man. Thank you. I'm looking forward to a party tonight.
Let's do it. Let's have some fun. Let's warm it up, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, and there it is. A conversation with Torrey Pines Smith. That was a lovely time. We had a great time. Thank you, Torrey, and to the entire crew for being so warm and welcoming and hosting us. And I'm pretty sure I ate all the little cheese snacks that they put out. So the fries were really good. It was weird. They had like chicken and fries all of a sudden next to the cheese snacks. I mean, I'm not complaining because I ate a bunch of the fries too. So it's a good time. Hey, did you enjoy today's episode? Do you think Burner Podcast is contributing something good to the community? Well, I invite you to just pick up your phone or whatever device it is you've been listening to this on and forward this show to 3 friends. That's it. Just like send it in a text, send it in an email, like, hey, Brosif, you're the kind of person who legitimately participates in the community and feels very deeply connected to burner consciousness around the world. You would enjoy this podcast. Just, here, listen, that's pretty much that simple. I also wouldn't complain if you posted it on social media, even though I myself am not on there very much. Thank you, listeners. Appreciate you all very much. Burner Podcast is produced by a revolving team of volunteers and producers. The team is expanding. We're working on stuff. All the links to all of the things, the links to the company and all the stuff that we discussed in today's show, everything is over at burnerpodcast.com. The music that you always hear in the beginning and at the end of this show is produced by Joe Man. He's based out of Austin, Texas. That's his music is over at soundcloud.com/DJ Joe Man. Anyway, that's it. See you next time. Love, light, and all that other crap. Ciao.
Fuck your burn.